15:23 on the 15th of August, and I'm still awaiting the relevant bodies, the Ombudsman, to overcome the obstructions of financial frauds in Southwest Ireland that have been actively frauding from my wealth since 2006. The obstruction is of obstinance and ignorance. It's definitely offending humanitarian values. It's definitely not sending a very safe message to young aspirants of humanitarianism, and it's definitely not upholding the Declaration of Human Rights, and it's definitely not respecting democracy or women and children. So this little agenda, this little initiative that's caused gargantuous danger and trouble and problems, all because of a collective in Southwest Ireland stealing from me, defaming me, and deluding themselves with their level of entitlement that is non-existent, is highly irrational, illogical, and not very intelligent for intelligent people to be supporting, especially with an oversight of what has already occurred as a consequence of the crime that has been conducted against my child and I being supported, not only since 2006 but also since 2017. Now, the origins of COVID-19, as I keep reiterating, commenced with the unlawful actions of my son being unlawfully separated from me and I experiencing unlawful detainment by stalkers of farm fraud and blasphemy in this community. There are people that have offended the Catholic Church and people's homes, and that have offended my nuptials, and they have forgotten the huge endeavour I took upon myself to spare this community from spiritual violence that I took upon myself in 2018. That is after being incorporated to acts of treason by individuals that have offended my Fernan O'Regan family. The issue of these people being repeat offenders in spiritual violence, and that have lied about my good character, and that have misconstrued the facts, and that have altered the reality, and that have been of corruption in this community, are not very safe people to be supporting. They have not been on the side of the law, and they haven't been on the side of good faith. So in the best interests of the World Health Organization, the origins of COVID-19, if ever continued as a subject of academic fraud, which it is, that is not authentically appropriated or accredited, I have experienced the most dangerous circumstance of wrongdoing, as has my son, due to poor healthcare provision. So those people that are in my proximity thinking they're going to have a heavy hand with me, or that they're going to put down their foot or their fist, are putting children and doctors at high risk. As is noticeable, doctors have been taking it upon themselves to have themselves struck by their own misdemeanour with the Hippocratic Oath. Now, these people do not have any right of way, and they don't have any authority or safety offending any faith or family. The spiritual violence in this community that I addressed between 2018 and 2019 was quite dangerous, and that had been active in this community for over 10 years. So those people that have been of corruption and racketeering and money laundering and stealing from my wealth and not fulfilling their duties and obligations have been in bad faith and bad business and bad debts. So I'm still tolerating their presence in society. They are unlawfully in society. They are unlawfully in my proximity, and they are unlawfully discussing matters that are not within their remit. So this is basic terminology for a big, huge, complex issue. There are people that are stepping over the line and that are preoccupied with what they have no entitlement or authority to be discussing. So in the best interest of academic credibility, academic honourability, all the matters concerning Brexit, the origins of recovery of wealth that commenced from Southwest Ireland and my humanitarianism, that affected Britain and Ireland and beyond. If, when, and at whatever stage people misappropriate the facts, those people that are contending with fallacies and falsehoods and working with the failings of the failures that failed the state or that failed democracy might be careful about supporting an unworthy, unsafe cause. Those people that are of creative intellectual property theft from me have damaged and disrespected human life, and they've taken it upon themselves to discuss matters that I do not give them any authority to discuss personal matters of mine. So these people have caused very dangerous damages, harms and losses, and they are still hiding their heads under the sand, and that's not professional and that's not proper conduct. So those people that don't know how to conduct themselves properly and that have put women and children at risk, my child is still a missing person, and I hate to say it, but the University of Limerick and my humanitarian beginnings are all unfortunately being sadly put into jeopardy. So those people that don't respect the role of the humanitarian and that are collaborating with more spiritual violence in this community that I addressed and resolved and repaired between 2018 and 2019 might be careful about offending church records of my little boy Garrod and my nuptials that are not subject to change by farm frauds that are of bigamy and slander and transgressions against the church. So they've been preoccupied, to say the least, and they have no entitlement for trespassing there in Ardfert and Kilflynn. And as I've said, my son is still a missing person, and local politicians have been made aware of the issues rising from crime I'm tolerating since 2006. So the crime is still continuing. The ombudsman have been notified, the government has been notified, and unfortunately the constitution and the democracy have been offended. So the UN, the European Court, all of these agencies, I hope you're aware of the track record of these people in the southwest of Ireland that have caused obstruction, fraud and theft from me, that are in my proximity illegally, unlawfully, and exacerbating their crimes against the Constitution. So it would be greatly appreciated that if any credible humanitarians that respect zero tolerance, peaceful, harmonious society, those people that are disrespecting all of that are disrespecting the children's futures. And as an educator and as a mother, I have concerns for people that offend civility and propriety in society with ignorance and with just poor conduct. So this is my upload for today. I'm still awaiting the United Nations. You've heard from me since 2019. The European Court, you've heard from me as well. And as I'm of royal protocol and as I'm experiencing a high level of theft, fraud and crime and slander of mental health candidates, mental health frauds and slanderers of debt evasion, all of these matters put people at risk. My COVID-19 research is quite extensive, and those people that think they're altering or editing and being cheeky are putting innocent children's lives at risk and offending intelligence, really, I suppose. So people that don't know how to use their IQ properly might be careful about their emotional quotients or their social quotients or societal quotients as well, because there's nothing worse than breeding ignorance in society, like a bad pest or pestilence. So those people that don't know how to behave properly are really not setting a good example to young people. And if there are any people in my proximity that I do not welcome, authorise, or that are of repeat crimes against my good name, I think it would be safest for the people that have prospered from debt recovery to ensure that ASBOs are not putting young people at risk, offending the social reform that originated from me. So as any ASBOs have already displayed, the social influencers, if we just review what has been presented in the caliber or quality of the presentation of their work. It hasn't been very authentic, and it's laden with fraud and corruption. So anyone that's working on the side of inauthenticity, unfortunately, is not supported by the legalities and the faith facts of my research. As I said, I don't support fraud of my academic research. It's just simply not possible. And I don't support people discussing my nuptials or my farms without my consent. So the Vatican Church has been notified of the bigamy I've experienced and of the spiritual violence in this community that I addressed single-handedly in 2018, that led to people experiencing circumstances that highlighted matters of discrepancy in their conduct. So anyone ignorant or rude, not observing protocol and thinking they're in a position of entitlement or authority would want to be very careful about protocol, royal protocol and COVID-19 protocol. I'm imploring of the United Nations to contact me personally, and that is only as a humanitarian and as a royal mother. The United Nations has a huge obligation to Eleanor Roosevelt and her declaration, and also to the legislation social reform that came about as a consequence of my early days with the University of Limerick. So the crime is continuing. The history of corruption from Southwest Ireland, where I've been stolen from, and where my child has been stolen from me, isn't very flattering or very successful for intelligent people to be working with. It insults people's intelligence, and it insults people's level of decorum and propriety, and it obviously brings down the standards when people don't know how to behave respectfully and sensibly and intelligently. So that's as much as I have to say today. This is for the interest of the European Court of Human Rights. Intruders are still overstepping the line and are still putting bad production out there with regard to a bad plot and line that is really putting people's noses out of place when privacy laws and defamation laws aren't being respected. People have overstepped the line, and that makes walking on my land a little bit more unsafe, which they seem to have difficulty comprehending. It's a prosecution offence, the crimes I'm experiencing, and I hope the Vatican is aware of the dangers of repeat spiritual violence being conducted by ASBOs in this community that have already been found to be guilty. It's a